Homeowners in East Williamson County, Texas, say they're worried they'll lose their land if plans for a county road project continue. This week on Inside the Investigations, KXAN reporter Mercedes Hernandez explains why the number of eminent domain cases is growing and how Texas law impacts what homeowners can do.
Hello everyone, welcome back to KXAN Live. I'm your anchor Esmeralda Zamora, and today we have our Inside the Investigation segment with investigative reporter Kelly Wiley. Kelly, thanks so much for joining us. How are you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me. And this week we've got joining us Mercedes Hernandez, who was our investigative fellow this year. I know nobody knows what that means, but this is someone who usually is not on our investigative team per se, but she had an amazing pitch that she's been working on for months now. Mercedes, you got more than 80,000 clicks into this story within a day, which is crazy. Obviously, eminent domain, which was the subject of your investigation, resonates with people. Why do you think it does resonate with so many folks?
I think a lot of people will, I know that I have seen our stories in Williamson County specifically do really well, just because I think that audience is pretty news savvy, if you will. And so they've always got kind of their fingers on the pulse of what's going on. And when we are able to kind of branch out into those stories, they really, really eat it up. But I think this resonated, I know it resonated beyond Williamson County too, because I think we all see that Austin has changed quite a bit. We see the developments kind of changing, and I think we all maybe have a little bit of an inkling of how those things kind of work. But I think the story really, I wanted it to be kind of a resource that explained a little bit more about how road projects specifically really kind of pave the way for certain things and how those things are done. And I think a lot of people were had their curiosity kind of settled by that, hopefully.
For sure. Well, what made you start looking at eminent domain to begin with? Because for some background, you were our Williamson County reporter for a long time, so you kind of know the area, but what made you start looking at this?
Yeah, so I mean, like you said, I was our Williamson County beat reporter. I know we've got another one there now, Barrett Tryon, who's also fantastic, but we can't really kind of dig into the weeds like you can with fellowship, like I was able to whenever you're doing these kind of day-to-day stories. And so covering that beat, covering the different developments that are happening out there, really kind of gave me the idea for this story. Specifically, in my 2 years covering that beat, I just noticed more and more often kind of on each commissioner's court agenda would be, one thing related to eminent domain, kind of asking for a condemnation request to be approved by those commissioners. And I would just see that happening more and more often as the years kind of went on. And I tried a couple of times to get a story like this kind of off the ground, but kind of ran into a little bit of red tape and, we can't meet today, and then I'd have to move on. So I really appreciated being able to tell this story over kind of the last 6 months, really, because it's one I'd been wanting to do for a while.
And that's the sign of a good reporter, that you earmarked that. You noticed it and you thought, I'm going to come back to this eventually and figure out what's going on there. And what I loved about your story is you told it obviously from the perspective of this woman who, like so many others, gets a letter in the mail that they're reading talking about eminent domain, potentially, not having their property, and thinking, what the heck? So tell me, what was the general feeling among people who are getting these letters?
I think kind of similar to Angela, who I met in pursuing this story. I think shock is kind of the first emotion that many of them feel, and she lucked out here in this scenario where this was a letter, not an offer letter, but a letter from a contractor with the county that said, hey, we'd like to meet with y'all to talk about your land and this project that's coming through. And that is not necessarily something that has to be done in this process. And so I think it's a little shock, a little relief to know that you have some time to kind of delve into this. But then I think a lot of people that I've talked to for this story also eventually start to feel frustrated because they're just kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop in a way. Like with this road project that I talked about, Arterial K, I mean, it could still be years before it officially becomes a real thing, and this is just kind of something that they have to worry about until, you know, the county or whoever gets to finally say, yes, this is happening, or no, this isn't happening.
So let's back up a little bit. You mentioned that the letter that the person in your story got was really more of a courtesy than most people usually get. This was saying, hey, let's have a conversation about your property. What can this look like?
Yeah, this can look like a couple of things. This letter specifically looked like hey, we want to talk to you and we're going to have some community meetings. We're going to bring a couple of people in at a time. But that does look different than in an offer letter. I mean, kind of think of it when it comes to jobs. You might see a job listing, for example, but that's totally a different thing than, an offer letter from a job that puts, this is how much you will be making, this is how much we will be paying you kind of thing. I hope that makes sense. Did that make sense?
Yeah, so this would be, so she kind of received this letter saying, like, let's meet and talk about your property. We have this project going on. But alternatively, what usually happens or can happen is a letter saying we're offering you this much for your property.
Yes, yeah, exactly. In some cases, that is the people's initial offer letter that they receive. That can be their first communication that something is coming their way.
Wow.
Which once that offer letter is received and kind of the proof that somebody has received it is taken by the entity that offered it. In all, things can be kind of resolved in a way, or at least the court proceedings stuff can get started in just a little over a month. And I know for a lot of people I'm thinking ahead to Christmas right now. Christmas is less than a month away now, and that will be here in no time. And I can only imagine how that feels to get, trying to get your ducks in a row for something as big as wondering where you might move to, if you're getting compensated fairly, finding an attorney to represent you, getting an appraiser of your own out to your land, and how you're going to pay for all of that. That's a lot to think about in just a couple of weeks.
And what can people do? Because you're saying all of this can kind of start happening in a matter of a month. They get the offer letter. What can people do from there?
Yeah, so something that people can do is, reach out to their local commissioner. I know that Angela Watuski, who I spoke to again for this story, and the Preserve Wilco Now folks that she helps lead, are very much in conversations with the county. They have been talking to their precinct commissioner. I believe that is Russ Bowles. He's precinct number 4 commissioner there in Williamson County. They've had an open dialogue with him. I know for the lawmaker side of things that I talked to in this story, Representative Burns asks that people reach out to their local lawmakers as well. And I know that the Preserve Wilco Now folks have too. Everybody here just kind of encourages folks to keep records, keep record of any letters that they receive. You can make a complaint to the Texas Real Estate Commission against a specific agent if you do feel like you're being treated unfairly. But as I've also learned, and hope to follow up in the next couple of weeks or maybe a month or two or so, that the TREC doesn't really keep track of any of those complaints in a way that makes it clear that these are related to eminent domain. It's pretty red tapey, if you will, but there are ways that people can just kind of make themselves knowledgeable about this process, and I really hope that this story can be a starting point for that.
Mercedes, I'm so sorry, I'm frozen. Let me pull you guys back up. So you've talked to a lot of lawmakers throughout the process. What were some of the specific questions that you had for them?
Yeah, so I was really curious to know what the timeline for this law that I talked about, HB 2730, went into effect in 2022, kind of when the drafting of that started. And again, Representative Burns, who I will say was very polite to me in kind of these proceedings. He was very fair and very open to all of my questions that I had. But I did ask him, how did you guys get to this point? had been a long journey, that they had taken at least 3 legislative sessions to come up with the bill that eventually became law, but it also was a lot of communication between the lawmakers and the landowners' rights groups and the entities that can also get these eminent domain rights, like your oil and gas pipeline companies as well. So that's a lot of people to get on board. But yeah, I was mostly interested to know how long it took to get there, if he thinks that 14 days is enough time. And I mean, his flat out answer to that was he would love to see more time, that he thinks that people should be given as much time as they feel like that they need in this process. But unfortunately, 14 days to respond to that final offer for somebody's land was what all of the people kind of involved in that situation, in the drafting of this bill rather, kind of.
They've got a lot that they're wanting to tackle during the next legislative session. But did you get the impression that this is something they want to really revisit?
I did ask Burns about that. I said, is this something that you guys are planning to maybe update? And he says, if the law isn't working out as it's currently written, if the kind of parameters that are in there right now aren't realistic, that people need to know, specifically his committee. He's the chair now of the Land and Resource committee there for the House of Representatives, and a lot of that conversation can also start by reaching out to your local representatives too, because this isn't just a Williamson County or Central Texas issue. This is an issue that that really applies to the whole state. Yeah, and just to kind of speak frankly, a quick look of the kind of laws that have been, the bills rather, that have been proposed for this next legislative session. There are several new ones related to eminent domain. Now, it remains to be seen if those will maybe eventually become law, but there seems to be a focus, at least this upcoming legislative session, on kind of tweaking certain eminent domain rights. And we're planning to keep watching that.
Well, obviously there'll be a lot of interested people wanting to see what you find out and what they do. Clearly there is an interest here based on all the people that have been reading this story. Let's take a look at your article, because there really you can get see the full picture of what Mercedes found. It was such a well put together, thoughtful report on this issue, one that obviously impacts a lot of people and that a lot of people are wanting to know more about. Anything else that you would want viewers to know, your takeaways when it came to this investigation?
Yeah, well, one, thank you so much for all of your compliments. You were so sweet. I think something that I just want people to know is that, you know, the information is out there, and I think that's kind of what a lot of the entities are banking on, is that, yeah, we're putting the information out there, but it's up to the people to go seek it. I really want this article specifically to be a resource for people. I know that box that's on the screen there, the who to contact, that kind of goes through the steps of how to file a complaint with agencies like the Texas Real Estate Commission. If you're in Williamson County and have questions about a certain road project, or maybe even whisperings of a road project in your neighborhood, the county has told me that they are open to answering those questions as often as they can, if that's just emailed to them. So I think I really want people to know that the information is out there, that you know, you should be able to protect yourself as much as you can in these situations, because once the ball gets rolling, I know that it can get rolling quickly. But yeah, that they have rights here in these situations. I know that this is happening more and more often in our area. So I just want folks to be able to know that they do have certain protections afforded to them in eminent domain cases.
Well, thank you so much, Mercedes, for joining us. If you are interested in watching her full story, you can go to KXAN.com under the Investigates tab, and the article is titled Sell or Get Pushed Out. Thank you both for joining us.
Thanks.